Hi everyone. I wanted to do a video series about boundaries. This is a topic I feel very passionately about. It's a very broad topic, so I'm going to be doing a series of videos within the topic of boundaries, and each of them is going to be covering a different aspect of what boundaries are, what they aren't, how to set them, and the benefits that come from having healthy boundaries in your life and in your relationships with others. So today I want to just discuss what boundaries are. I'm going to try not to make this video too long because I really just want to provide a clear definition of the concept of boundaries and some misconceptions that people have about them. I think most of us are aware of the need to set boundaries in our lives and with other people, but I think very few people realize that setting boundaries is actually a skill. It's an art form that you get better at the more you practice it, and that it's possible to improve your boundary setting skills to the extent that you actually get really good results with other people. I think most people tend to fall on one end of the spectrum or the other when it comes to setting boundaries. So on the one extreme, you have people who are very people pleasing, and they are very reluctant to set boundaries because they're concerned about the approval of other people, and they believe that if they don't set boundaries with others, it will make people like them more. So they tend to stuff their feelings down when someone crosses a boundary. And these are the types of people who tend to simmer with resentment underneath. Sometimes they explode outwardly as a result of stuffing down their feelings. And sometimes they turn that resentment and anger on themselves, and it comes out in not looking after themselves properly. So on the one end of the spectrum, as I say, you have the people-pleasing types, people who are reluctant to set boundaries because they believe that boundaries are mean or harsh or nasty, or they might have just had very poor experiences with people setting boundaries with them. Perhaps other people set boundaries with them in a way which was extremely unkind, and they've decided they don't want to do that to other people, so they shy away from setting boundaries altogether. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people whose boundaries don't really look like boundaries. They look like huge, high walls with nasty thorns growing all over them and big razor sharp barbs along the top of the wall. These are people who are just far too harsh in the way that they set boundaries. When someone crosses a boundary with them, they just use too much force in trying to put that person back in their place. And this type of person is also motivated by fear. They have probably had experiences where they've been taken advantage of, and they decide that they never want that to happen to them again. So in their minds, the way to protect themselves and to get people to never take advantage of them again is to have these boundaries that are really far too rigid and actually just keep people out rather than just maintaining a healthy boundary. So perhaps by what I've said so far, you can see that both types of people are actually motivated by fear. And fear of getting hurt in both instances. The people pleasers are afraid of being rejected and abandoned, or otherwise of losing people's approval if they set boundaries. And the people whose boundaries are just far too stern and harsh are also afraid of being hurt. They're afraid of what other people will do to them. So they keep people at far too much of a distance, and they react with too much force when they set a boundary. So there's fear on either side, and neither of those is an effective way to set boundaries. Both of those approaches to setting boundaries will just reinforce the fear that those people feel. Because over here, the people pleasers who are afraid of people rejecting and abandoning them if they set boundaries lose people's respect. People take advantage of them and don't value them. And no one really wants to stick around a person that they don't respect, someone who lets you take advantage of them. So people end up rejecting and abandoning them anyway. And that just further reinforces the fear that that person feels. And over here, people who set boundaries that are far too harsh, because they respond with such force to a person who crosses a boundary, it puts that person very much on the defensive, and that person then responds back normally in a negative way. They feel as if their boundary has now been crossed. So it generally turns into an ugly situation quite quickly. And that again just reinforces the belief on the part of the person setting the harsh boundary that you need to be very stern with people. And I'm sure we all know people like this, especially in the workplace, or people who are very sort of very tough will often say things like, you can't let people walk all over you, you've got to be tough to get by in this world. They just are far too afraid of others taking advantage of them. And they tend to get into bad situations with people because of their harsh attitude. And that just, as I say, further reinforces their belief that other people are not really to be trusted, and that the world is a harsh place where people are just waiting to take advantage of you. So you can hopefully see that neither of these extremes is very healthy. Good, healthy boundaries fall in the middle of these two extremes. And setting good boundaries requires a great deal of awareness of yourself and of the other person. So before I talk about how to set healthy boundaries, let's just quickly recap what a boundary is. A boundary is a line that you draw in your interactions with other people, where you say, this far and no further. I'm willing to tolerate your behavior up to this point, but beyond that point, I'm not willing to tolerate it anymore. And when you come too close to that line, I'm going to speak up and let you know that you're getting close to my boundary. And if you keep pushing, if you keep coming, I'm going to have to take action to protect myself. So let's look at some examples of situations where you need to set a boundary. Say, for example, you have a close friend, and she is moving house and can't afford to pay someone to help her move house. So she's asked you if you can help her move her furniture. And say you're getting to the end of a very long week at work. You're absolutely exhausted. You've been working long hours and you're really just looking forward to some rest. You're at the point where you feel as if you don't get some sleep, you're actually going to make yourself sick, and you just won't have enough energy for the next week if you don't give yourself a proper rest over the weekend. And you can see you've had this sort of a week, and it gets to maybe Thursday evening, and she sends you a text saying, I'm moving this weekend and I can't afford movers, and I really need help moving. Can you please help me with moving my furniture and my boxes to my new house? And let's say you can tell that it's a big job and that if you were to agree to her request, you would be busy for possibly 4, 5, 6 hours on Saturday. And you just don't have the energy. And you can feel your heart sink as you get this message, because on the one hand, you really feel for her predicament, and a part of you would like to help. Of course, you care about her. On the other hand, you know that if you agree, you're going to be putting yourself at serious risk for feeling ill and simply just not having the energy to carry on. You know that you really need rest that weekend. So what do you do? Let's look at this first from the perspective of the two extremes that I talked about earlier in this video. And then we'll look at a healthy way to set a boundary in this situation. So I think it's pretty easy to know what the people pleaser in this situation would do. They'd have a big huff and puff and a sigh, and they would, feel that sense of dread about helping the friend. But they would agree to do it anyway, because they don't want to lose the friendship. They don't want the friend to dislike them, or that friend to feel as if they're a disloyal, unhelpful person. So they'll agree to help. And they'll go along on the Saturday and probably be quiet and resenting all the time that they're there and being perhaps a little bit sullen, but because they don't really want to be there, but they'll do it to keep the peace, and because they don't want the friend to have any ill feelings towards them. On the other extreme, you've got the person who tends to go overboard and be too harsh with their boundaries. They might say something like, I can't believe that you're asking me to help you again. I just helped you last week. Didn't I take you to the airport a month ago? And now here you are asking me again. All you do is take. And what do I ever get in return? You didn't even bother to say thank you the last time I helped you. So no, you can find someone else. I'm tired. I need a rest this weekend, and I don't want to help someone who's ungrateful. Okay, that's just an example of the type of reaction you could get. This person is tired, they want to rest, and instead of recognizing that their tiredness is making them a bit cranky and all they need to do is set a boundary, they take out their feelings on this person who has requested something from them. Right, now, setting a healthy boundary in this situation means taking a moment to assess the situation. This friend has asked you for certain things. They want you to help out for 4, 5, 6 hours on Saturday. They want you to drive. They want you to help lifting and carrying things that are possibly quite heavy. And the other facts are, you are very tired from work. You know that you need to rest. you know you don't really have the energy to help out very much, and that you need your sleep. And you'd like to help. You don't want to say no outright, but you know that you can't agree to all their requests. So it's about establishing what you are willing and able to do without feeling resentful. That's what a healthy boundary is about. It's about establishing what you can comfortably put up with while still honoring yourself. You don't want to go too far into the extreme of tolerating and agreeing to everything that this person has asked you for. And you also don't want to necessarily say no to all of it, because that might also be too harsh. And if you needed help in the future, that person might respond in the same harsh way. You want to, if you're interested in maintaining this relationship, you want to keep a certain amount of goodwill. So, but again, this is about you. This is about establishing your preferences and what feels good and right to you. So you might say something like, "Hi, friend. I would have loved to have helped you this weekend with all of those requests. And under normal circumstances, if I'd had a good week, I would have been happy to help. But I have had a very stressful week, and I'm extremely tired and worn out. And I know myself, and I would not be able to do everything that you've asked for. I would be happy to help out for an hour on Saturday morning. And then, unfortunately, I do need to rest because I've got another busy week next week." That's an example of something you can say. You haven't said no outright, and you haven't dishonored the request that they've made of you, but you've also set a healthy boundary. You've sent the message to that person: I hear that you are in a difficult situation and I want to help. I see you. I hear what you've asked of me, but I have a life as well, and I'm willing to go to this point and no further. This honors you and it honors the relationship, because not only have you now agreed only to what you can actually do, but you've also given that person a glimpse into yourself. You've said, I've also had a tough week, and this is how I'm feeling. I'm tired and I'm stressed out, and I still need energy to carry on next week. So I'm going to need to put limits on the help that I'm able to give you. And a reasonable person, one who cares about you, will understand this. And if anything, it will make them respect you more, and it'll bring you closer together, because they'll know in future, the weekends might be a time that you need to rest and recharge. And you'll find it easier to set these sorts of boundaries with that person in the future. So it honors the relationship as well as your own need for rest and time to yourself. Now, if you need to say no outright, there's a way to do that as well. Say you don't want to provide any help. Perhaps you had things planned for your Saturday morning. All you need to do is simply say, I sympathize with the predicament that you're in, and I would have liked to have helped, but I have other things planned for Saturday morning, and I won't be able to this time. And that's all you need to say. You don't need to go into a lengthy explanation or go overboard with apologizing. And again, if it's the truth, then that still keeps the relationship intact because you're simply communicating your truth to the other person. Just be careful, as I mentioned earlier, when you are setting a boundary, that you're not unnecessarily pushing the other person away. You want to really be authentic in the boundaries that you set. So if someone makes a request from you and you get that uncomfortable feeling, it's usually because they're asking too much. So go inside yourself and have a moment to think about why this request feels like too much. In the example that I gave, it's because you're tired and you've had a long week and you need the weekend to recharge. And in that case, it's perfectly acceptable to set a boundary with that person. But if you are tempted to set a boundary in order to keep distance between yourself and the other person, that's just something to pay attention to as well. Because boundaries are, in actual fact, meant to bring us closer together. They're a way to share our truth with another person, and not just a way to be. They're not only about saying no, they're about communicating how we feel and what feels right to us. So just make sure that they are authentic and that you're not just unnecessarily saying no to the person in a knee-jerk way, because we all want that goodwill from the people that we're in relationships with. So sometimes it means, if something is not a hard boundary for you, sometimes it means saying yes, even if it's not something you entirely want to do. So it's about figuring out where your boundary is and what are you willing and prepared to do and what are you not willing and prepared to do. So I'm going to explore this topic more in other videos, but I thought that would be a good introduction to boundaries for today. And in other videos, I'll talk about setting boundaries in friendships in more detail, setting boundaries at work, setting boundaries in your romantic relationships, and I'll be including lots of examples and tips to help you. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I would look forward to seeing you in the next one.